Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Satsang, your personal communion with God or truth, because that's what the term actually means. God is truth, and the devil simply represents falsity, that which is an obstruction to truth. Many of you have noticed that I really shied away for the longest time of using that term God because it has so much overhead. It's got so much stuff that's been laid on top of it over the centuries. It's been so abused, used as the justification for, oh my God, some of the most horrific things in human history. It seems to bring out when the ego, that sense of a personal self and its love of power wraps its hands around it. It becomes a justification for all sorts of things, which it still is. it's still being used in that way. So I kind of wanted to explore it a little bit and try to reclaim the essence of it, the goodness of it, the value of that term, and help those of us who grew up in the West, right? And I'm going to say the Middle East too, because it's all the tradition of the same Muslim, Christian, Judaic, because they all have the same root, right? They all have the same root of this particular sense of God that was very personal, very capricious, demanding, punitive, violent, capricious, because change his mind on a whim. And the record of him is just filled with contradictions and missteps. But I wanted to bring into it the element that is always overlooked, even in the Christian Judaic tradition. The famous story of Moses and the burning bush and God and asking him, her, this disembodied being, speaking through a bush that's on fire but isn't getting burnt up. Who sent me? When I go and I go on this mission, okay, I'm taking the mission, right? And they say, who sent me? In whose name am I coming? I can't be coming on my own. I'm just this stupid guy tending sheep in the middle of nowhere. And it's the most enigmatic response. You say, who sent me? And he says, I am that I am. What? What the hell does that mean? So I'm supposed to go say to everyone, I am sent me? Hey, I'm here on behalf of I am. And interestingly enough, if you read the rest of the narrative and the Moses and the whole thing with the Pharaoh and the Exodus, which never actually happened, by the way. I mean, it's completely a mythological story. And it represents the Exodus from the bondage that is within, which is our own sense of ourself, which the devil represents. But I'm digressing. Never once during the entire story does Moses ever say that. Nobody asks him, and he never volunteers that information, which I find very interesting to note. Which means there's a deeper meaning to it. The sense I am. To me, the most obvious way of looking at that is that sense of the I am, the great I am, that was whispering to Moses out of that bush, is the very same sense I am that you and I are experiencing every single day. It is only because of this very strange tradition that it got twisted into this God out there somewhere, right? Heaping all sorts of nasty stuff on you, mostly nasty. Holding up a few carrots that you never actually get, and maybe one after you're dead if you've done a good job. you may get one of those carrots. It's a big carrot, right? It's a really nice carrot, but it's a carrot nonetheless. But instead, looking at it as something extremely intimate, something you might say that's hidden right inside of you, right in the heart, right behind the eyeballs. That the God within, right? The I am within. And everyone here has a sense of I am. Heck, the mosquito has a sense of I am. They can't articulate it, they can't form concepts, but there's no such thing as a being that doesn't have a sense of I am. It's kind of the universal thing. Well, what if that is what that whole story was referring to? Not something out there, not some super being, not some cultural manifestation, not some promiser of benefits but deliverer of punishment, not the great enforcement of the law, but the actual silent inner sense we all have. What if that is the true God? What if that's the truth? What if that sense I am is not just a personal being, is not just somebody, happens to be living inside this body, right? Still, that may get released from the body at some time, but still very, very compressed, very, very finite. What if that's a complete misconception of what the I am is? The real nature of that sense I am, that is not dependent on the body, that's been there forever, which has no beginning and no end. What if that's the truth? What if that is truly God? Well, then what then is the devil? Well, the word, the devil, his name is Satan, right? But Satan in the Old Testament is a title. It doesn't refer to a being. Matter of fact, even in the early Christianity, there's not a lot. There's no evidence for that. It really is, our view of the devil and the horns and all of that is a medieval idea. It came much later. That it simply means one who opposes. Anyone who opposes is a Satan, right? The prosecuting attorney in a trial is a Satan. It's the one that accuses one of wrongdoing or guilt. And of course, we don't have to have anybody outside of doing that. We're doing it all at the time to ourselves. And because of this misunderstanding of God, we believe, we accept, we plead guilty to charges that aren't true, because we have been disconnected from the truth, the true I am, the true God, and not recognizing the true devil, which is simply everything that says that's not true, everything that announces you as an I am other than that. But this is a process. This is not something that you flip overnight, because it is so deeply ingrained in us individually, and of course ingrained in the culture as a whole. I mean, look at the world. The whole world is based on this idea that you're the problem. that you are guilty. When you're guilty, you deserve to be punished, and that's the right way to do things. And if you're not, well, then praise God. So you get all the blame and none of the credit. What a great deal that is. That kind of sounds like mom, doesn't it? So the only thing I want to do with this is to point you towards that sense of I am, and to recognize there may be more to it than just this personal feeling of being. That, in fact, that simple phrase in that beautiful mythological story, that God was announcing himself, herself, as the very sense of being within you, that we've misidentified it as a personal I, but in fact it is the impersonal I, appearing very personally, experiencing very personally. It's not a denial of one's humanity or one's personal experience and any of the stuff that happens in one's life. It's a redefining it. Who is it that's actually having this experience of the person and a personal life and relationships and friends and work and interests and loves and hates and the whole? Who is it that's actually having that experience? That would be the I am, for sure, right? Because if you look at who's experiencing the body, who's experiencing the mind, who's experiencing friends, who's experiencing all of this, well, it's you. Right? In that sense, I am. But now, who are you? Are you just a person experiencing personal things? Or is this, in fact, the true God, the I am, the truth, the impersonal truth that is the very essence of the person, the very essence of the being, the very essence of beingness itself, the beingness, not a being, but beingness itself, manifesting itself in countless forms. That's the true God. That's what God, the word God, actually refers to. You can dispense with all of the theological nonsense that has just been developed over the years, centuries actually, right? You can just dispense with it. Right? Now, you may still feel a certain kind of tug because we are all taught to fear this God. But somehow that was the key to righteousness, which is just insane, right? But just notice that that's simply an old reverberation as part of conditioning within the system, and be adamant and faithful that it's not the truth. That is not the nature of the true God, the true self. And I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you all for being here. It's time for me to open it up for questions. Please get your questions in early, because I actually do have to be I've been going over and over. I just don't like leaving questions in the queue, but today I may have to. I have something after this that it's very important for me to attend. So good on that. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you for devoting this part of your day on Sunday. And some of you, it actually may already be Monday in the middle of the night. But devoting yourself to, I want to make it clear, you're devoting yourself to the truth. The seeker is seeking the truth, not seeking special benefit or special esoteric knowledge, just the truth. And the truth of myself. That's the only thing that matters. What is the true self? And of course, the whole discourse in the beginning was that true self is what we have named God and then mistaken for something other than the self. So hello, Mary. Great title for satsang. Thank you. Hello, Ava. In Poland, there's David and Elaine in Southeast England. Hello, John in Ireland. Sue, South Africa, ready and waiting. Hello, Sue. Hari Om from Jay. Hari Om. There, Jay and Dorte in Denmark. Rosario in Madrid. English, the natural way. Hey, G. Oh, that's Dale. Horrendous week with COVID and now bad day. My cat has just passed away an hour ago. Pray for him. Even in their deaths, cats, and dogs as well. All of our pets, all critters, are truly Zen masters. You can see the way they just totally surrender to it. They don't fight. They don't have a sense of mortality. You have to understand that, right? They don't have a sense of being the body. That is only in the human being. They're just pure energy. They are just pure experience in the moment. And when it comes time to let go of this experience, there's nothing in them that's holding on to it, because they don't have any kind of egoic sense of self. They've got no devil telling them something other than that. And so for them, it is the most natural of experiences, with no resistance, no fear. The fear that animals feel is only in response to the threat. But once they understand it's game over, it's a complete surrender. They just let it go. Be like that, right? It's our pets, and really all animals, they know it's time, right? Okay, this one's done, on to the next. Right? I remember sitting with my cat. She'd been with me for 17 years, and we were really close. I mean, I was so tight with her and I. This is the one that actually said my name. Little cat, squeaky cat. It was Greg. And I wasn't the only one who heard it. I wasn't tripping. Many people heard it. Did she just say your name? I said, yeah, she says my name. She was so ready. I mean, if I sat with her I said, are you ready? Do you want to go? You want to stay? I mean, if you want treatment, I'll get all the treatment. We can see how long this will work. I was giving her some liver pills and stuff like that. And it was just so clear, as if she could speak. I said, no, I'm done. I'm ready to go. I said, okay. So we sat together that whole night, and the next day it was time. And I bawled my eyes out for a while. So did my son, who had been also with her for, on and off for that period of time, when she first wandered up to her house when he was still young. And we took her in. But it was just such an amazing thing to see that she was not mourning. I was. She was just very gentle with me. She was very nice. She was very gentle with me, helping me through the time. And she was like, "It's cool. It's cool. It's cool." So anyway, yeah, take that in. Let the prayer be, how can I be more like him or her? Hello, Robbie in Romania. Mary GP, we missed about 3 minutes of your intro. Really? Are you does everybody miss it? Well, can't do anything about it now. If I'll see if it's in the recording. So I'll try to make an excerpt of this afterwards, and hopefully it's there. Right? It said it was broadcasting, so we'll have to find out. So Carl in Ireland, hello. Susa, love you, GP. Hugs from Norway. Hello, Susa. Great. Sally, hello, Sally. Also from Southeast England. Southeast England is well represented. Hello, Roberto, on your way to Lisbon. Fantastic. Sally, hi, GP. What is meant by an energetic assumption? And can you please give an example of what it is? Sure. An energetic assumption, it's a term I coined because I wanted to draw a distinction between the intellectual assumptions, beliefs, and that sort of thing, and assumptions that are there prior to any kind of discursive reasoning or thinking, and even actually prior then to thought, to not just thought, but to language, right? To even being able to speak. From a very from the time the sperm meets the egg, there's an adaptation going on. There's the natural development of the child in the womb, but there's also a sensitivity to the environment. It's forever responding to the environment. We have this very misguided notion that somehow I can separate myself from the environment in which I'm in, right? And you can't. you can't do it. This is a very weird idea that only exists in humans, that somehow there's like life and the environment of the world, and then there's me. And there's this universe, and then there's me, as if there was some kind of a separation between the two. When you recognize that the human organism is completely at one with the environment, it is constantly adapting and shaping itself to fit the environment for the express purpose of remaining whole, remaining secure, of surviving, right? And the human being has survived so well because of this incredible adaptability, our capacity to really take the shape of whatever environment we're in. So now, as the child, this is all going on. We're not participating in this at all. It is completely the natural function of the nervous system. Now, for most people, for the vast majority of people, the environment in which the child finds itself from the womb on is relatively consistent. It's relatively the same, right? It may not be great. Matter of fact, it may suck mud, but it will consistently suck mud. And as long as there's a consistency to it, the nervous system adapts to that. And with the consistency, the adaptation becomes automatic. It is not the kind of anything you need to think about. And within that environment, it forms, and I have to call it an energetic assumption about the nature of the environment, because it's not thought about. It is just this very complex set of responses, triggers and responses, that has mapped the environment and now assumes this is what the environment is like. It becomes its map of reality. And as such, it begins to interpret everything that happens using this assumption, this map of reality. And it needs to do this, right? Because there's nothing worse than it's not consistent. If it's not consistent, it's extremely unstable and a little bit nuts, because it doesn't know who to be, right? So anybody who's been raised by a parent or both who have been mentally ill in some way, or narcissistic, or the like, especially if there's an illness where you're not sure who's going to show up in that moment, it's incredibly difficult, because the nervous system never gets to settle in. So you're always going to be in a level of stress. That was my childhood, right? Fortunately, that's rare. For most, there is some consistency. Even mine, there was some consistency. There was I got so I could map what next crazy thing was going to show up. Now, this is all happening without me really aware of it. A long time later, I was aware of it. But this is what gets put into place with an expectation that this is the way it's always going to be. And in fact, a proclivity to want to recreate or maintain that, because the adaptation works, right? Which is why there's resistance to progress and change and that sort of thing. Not because it doesn't want to change, but because it knows it's safe here, right? And so it doesn't want that map of the world, of the universe, to change. That's an energetic assumption. And you don't think about it, you feel it. And you see it expressed. It is expressed in thoughts. So any thought you have that says, "Oh, geez, I don't know how I'm going to, I don't know. How am I going to do that?" Any kind of desire for something that's evolving or empowering or the like, and then how do I make that happen? That's the energetic assumption. You don't see these directly. You see the influence they have over thought, feeling, and sensation. That's how you begin to discern that they're there. This kind of this unspoken feeling that I'm not enough, I'm not valuable, I've got to earn love, I've got to earn respect, I've got to earn my value. It's not inherent. And out of that kind of distortion of reality that an energetic assumption is, grew the concept of God, that I have to earn God's love, right, through one method or another. So it becomes a projection of the energetic assumption. The Christian Judaic God, as well as the Islamic God, are a projection of that. Right? That God doesn't exist. Right? It is a projection that is keeping this in place. Oh, this has got to be in place, right? There's this, the grand enforcer. Yeah, is it work? Is it work? So you see how it manifests. If there's a feeling of discomfort, that's it. If there's this if a constant trying to fix myself, that's it. Right? Constantly trying to get repaired or improve, even if it takes the shape of trying to become the true self or attain enlightenment. That's what it is. It's just this underlying energy that seems to keep pushing your life in a particular direction. Once you see that, the cure is simply standing back for a bit, taking a step back and watching as it happens. And then eventually watching as it happens, something happens in the environment, you feel an impulse towards a particular response, but you don't make the response. You don't try to shut down the feeling of wanting to make that response, but you don't make the response. Now, admittedly, this is the most uncomfortable place to be. The most uncomfortable place to be. Because everything in you is wanting to react in the way that the programming has been set up to do it, right? Or suppress the feelings, right? But you're not actually acting on it. This is what diffuses it. And you just cultivate that inward path, to know that is all conditioning. It is not who you actually are. But you can't just push it aside. You can't do an end run around it. You have to go directly towards it, right? With a sense that this isn't who I am. This is just conditioning. I don't have to become who I am, but I do have to dismantle everything that is making me feel and act as someone I'm not. And that's kind of the picture in a nutshell of what energetic assumption is, how it affects you, how to notice that it's there. They're very subtle because you don't see them. You don't even know they're there. They're just acting it out. It's an assumption, right? Assumption by its nature is not something you question. You don't even know it's happening. It's just, well, this is the way it is, right? It rarely even gets into conscious thought like that, because if it does, consciousness goes, whoa, hold on, wait, is this really true? And it can begin to discern and assess. And then the process of dismantling can take place. So does that answer it for you, Sally? Thank you. Play on. Hi, G. Sometimes when I am resting in the self, I experience tension in my jaw and in my head. It can be very distracting and fatiguing, and also makes me anxious because I unintentionally focus on it. Okay. So the self doesn't need to rest in the self. Right? Be clear about that. That sense of resting in the self. Notice that you've created a subtle duality there, as if the self was this state you had to arrive at. It is the self that is aware of the desire to rest in peace. I mean, no, not that way. Oops, sorry. And if you do that, then you become aware of the fact that there's just all of this stuff going on. Right? We can call it conditioning. We can call it karma. We can call it all sorts of stuff. But yes, you can attention can happen. I remember for me many years ago, it was just my head would feel like, right? Which is simply the resistance to wanting to abide as the self. I urge you to try to make this transition. Then rather than resting in the self, resting as the self. Because you can see how you've got a sense of myself as someone who goes in and out of the self, right? Is that really true? And you can see the effect that that has. Now, as you begin to withdraw more to be, oh, I am the self, right? Then it'll go, well, if you're the self, why are you feeling all this? Why the tension in your jaw? All these reasons why. Well, if you really are that, it's the first temptation of Christ, right? Well, if you are the Son of God, I mean, if you are, well, prove it. This is how it works. That's the devil. That's the opposer, right? That's the prosecutor, right? So abide, rest as the self, and you realize that the self is always at rest, and that which is not at rest and seeking rest is happening on this screen. And so what if it shows up as attention in the jaw or in the head? And what if it demands? So what if it demands that you focus on it? Notice that it's demanding you focus on it. You're trying not to focus on it. What happens? It increases the tension, right? There's a tension there. So what do you say? Okay, screw it. Focus on it. All right, tense jaw. You have all my attention. Now what? It doesn't change the fact that I'm the self. I am resting as the self. And in this state of rest, there's an appearance of a tense jaw. Okay, be here. It doesn't affect my rest. It doesn't affect who I am. It doesn't affect anything that's really going on. And so you have my full attention. What is it that you want to tell me? And that will just kind of let go of the conflict, let go of the very subtle idea, which is really an energetic assumption that I am separate from the self, that I am a separate functioning being. And instead completely shifts that relationship to that this is simply something appearing in the myself as I am, and it's okay that it appears. So what? It doesn't change who I am. And at this point, you drop all the conflicts. So we have this idea that somehow if I'm really resting in the self, none of this will be happening. Well, you are abiding and resting as the self, because that's what you are, and this is happening. Okay? So drop that idea that it shouldn't be. And now what? What do you have left? Equanimity. The self is not some rarefied state, right? Where all is bliss, right? It's not that at all. It is a solid conviction that is unmovable, no matter what's going on. And life is going to challenge you, if you haven't noticed. And at some point you go, oh, great. The opportunity to dissolve even more of that which I have been holding on to that isn't actually me. How's that plan? That should do it. John Sheehan, is there an argument that mind is the devil? Okay, the devil is only that which opposes, right? Whatever that is, whatever sets itself up in opposition to the truth of your being is the devil, right? Now, Jesus referred to the devil as the liar and the father of it. I've also seen it the father of lies. So the devil is a liar. It cannot tell the truth, right? So when it said, when that thought or feeling arises, I am this, I'm mortal, I'm in trouble, I'm scared, I am, fill in the blank. That I am is not the true I am. There's no more anybody there than there is somebody on, there is somebody actually speaking as Siri. It is a program. There's nobody there. And if you, to whom this voice is speaking, does not believe there's anybody, does not take it on as themselves, that this is just a voice speaking and it is not the truth of me, that voice is disempowered. The devil has no power. It must convince you that what it's saying is true, and then your belief in it as true is the only power that it has. And it is our ignorance that somehow we think it is objectively true about me and I've got to get rid of it, rather than it only appears to be true because I believe it. And then the authority, which is the true God, that rejects that idea, is there in spades to say, no, I'm not that. This isn't true. That voice isn't true. It is a liar and the father of lies. Right? That father of lie is the I am that is not the true I am. Because anything can say I am. Right? Siri says I am. Right? all the artificial intelligence say I am. Right? And there's nobody there. So where's the question? Let me see. Mind is the devil. So the devil is simply the beliefs in the mind that are not true, that have been believed by you. That's the devil. They have no power of their own. So only by me believing in them do they carry any kind of weight or authority. So the mind in and of itself is innocent. It's not the problem. His mind is just a functioning. It just deals with thoughts. That's all. It is nothing but the flow of thoughts. It's not even something that deals with thoughts. It is only thought. No thought, no mind. There isn't such a thing as a quiet mind, right? When the mind is quote unquote quiet, it means the mind is not there, because it is only a flow of thoughts. If a flow of thoughts stops, even for a moment, and it actually does for all of us all the time, we just don't notice it. We assume thought is always going because we think there's a mind there that's thinking. When that happens, mind is no more. Like when the wind stops blowing and it's absolutely calm, we say there's no wind. We don't say, oh, the wind stopped blowing. We say there is no wind. So when thoughts stop flowing, there is no mind. It is that simple. So the mind is not inherently the devil, but the mind does not have capacity for discerning what is true and what isn't. That belongs exclusively to consciousness. And so the capacity for discerning the truth exists as an attribute of you, which is what nothing other than your inherent knowledge of the truth or God within, which discerns that is not true, that is not factual. And if that is really understood, the mind begins now to bend according to that, and the flow of thoughts go according to that. But we've all accumulated all sorts of false beliefs over time that have gone into sustaining these flows of thoughts, almost all of which were in place before you could even think or talk. Right? I mean, these are part of the energetic assumptions that then manifest themselves as particular tracks of thought that until you look at them and go, oh, wow, and really probe them to find that at the heart of all of them is the sense of being a separate self. They all revolve around that. Right? And so mind is innocent. Mind as a functioning of consciousness is innocent. It's not out to get you. It has no motivation whatsoever. It's simply like a radio that plays whatever's broadcast to it. It's more than that, because it's our capacity for language and all sorts of really powerful functions that it has. But like anything, it can only work with the quality of data that it has. Like any kind of computer, it can only work with the quality of data. So we just keep feeding it good data. So is that answered for you, John? Plan, could you please give me some advice? Oh, I think I did. Plan, yeah, that was a continuation. I didn't notice it. Hello, Facebook user. Namaskar, GP. Namaskar to you. Very refreshing to hear this about God. Oh, thank you, Mary. It's kind of, as you've noticed, I'm using the term more because I'm getting kind of more bold about recovering that. The evangelicals have kind of like claimed it and just utterly destroyed it, making people anti-religion when it should be only anti-them. Only that kind of egregious, virulent, aggressive kind of, imposition under the most horrific threats of punishment if you don't believe my way. Ugh. It's not God's fault that a bunch of jokers, many of which are just grifters, they're not even genuine. They're just con men and women. I think a lot of them don't even believe it. I don't know who does and who doesn't, but some are just deluded. Some are honest but misinformed, and some are just downright grifters. Yeah. So, John Recker, hi from Toronto. Thank you, GP, and everyone for this experience of being together. Wonderful, wonderful to have you, John. From Toronto, we'll be making a trip that up there in the not too distant future. Kamal, long time. Yes, good to see you. Rosalind, good vibes. The existence anything has is projected from the mind. The self cannot be seen without being distorted. What is the relationship between the storyteller and the sage? Well, the actual existence of anything is not a projection, obviously, right? The projection is only how we perceive things to be, right? So when we're talking about mind, we can talk about it in a whole bunch of different ways. But in this particular way, we're referring to it as there's stuff going on, right? I talked about this last week with the mirage in the desert. There's stuff going on. There's actual things going on. We don't have to worry about the true nature of them as of yet. But events happen in your life, right? But what we experience about that event is how we think about it, what we believe it to be, how we interpret it, right? So something happens and I hate it. I don't like it, right? So now it's a negative experience. Now that's a projection on it. Now it may not be pleasant, right? But again, there's all sorts of nuance because somebody else can have the exact same experience. That is, the exact same event can occur and have a completely different kind of response to it, right? Anything from all the way to I hate it to, wow, this is great, wonderful opportunity, and everything in between. Right? So the self cannot be seen. That is what you actually are, right? And just look at it from this to make it really, really simple. There's a projection going on, right? Now, if I recognize that the projection and the reality that is being projected on are not the same, I naturally want to move towards understanding what the reality is. And the teacher comes along and says, well, the reality can't be known out there because all you're ever going to experience is perception. So you have to turn around and go back to that which is projecting, right? Now, the projector doesn't project on itself. The projector cannot see itself. It can only be seen in how it is reflected. You can't see yourself. You have never, ever seen yourself, right? I mean, I'm looking at myself right now, right? And you're looking at me. I'm looking at myself and pretty much seeing on the screen I have here, because I've got the questions over here and make sure it continues to work. A little broadcast studio here, right? So I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing, right? But I never see this. Never. I see a reflection in the mirror. I see a picture on the video. I have never, ever seen myself. Neither have you. So is based on that, when I take in what other people say or think or picture me, it is only how they picture me. And it's going to be distorted or distorted. It's not completely negative. It's simply not the true picture, right? It's simply not the picture or the experience I have of myself. And so all of a sudden now I'm in a different place. Right? How do I see myself without it being distorted? Well, if I recognize that the distortion is always seeing myself through the eyes of someone else, I look at what am I actually experiencing? For a second. Feet are getting cold. It's cold. It's chilly in here. Oh, poor G. So anyway, so what do you actually experience of yourself? This is what I keep pointing at all the time. Our experience of ourselves is very different. It isn't a bunch of pictures of myself, right? Because I cannot actually see the one that's seeing. I can't. Right? So yeah, I can see a picture of this body, right? But I don't really experience that. I've never seen my face. I've never seen my eyes. Right? The eyes can't see themselves. I mean, what does the inside of your mouth taste like? We're moving inward, and by inward, I simply mean moving away from all that which is obviously being experienced to try to touch the ultimate experiencer themselves that cannot be seen directly. You can't. But yet somehow, even though you can't see, you can't hear, you can't touch, that you know that you are. There's a sense of I am. Now, this is all we know, right? And how do we know it? You can even see that the means, the mechanism by which we know is not the same as information coming in and descriptions and the like. It's impossible to describe. So the moment you're describing it, you're comparing it to stuff. It doesn't capture it. So even the way in which we know ourselves, that knowledge is not the same as the normal knowledge that people talk about, which is really, I'm describing you in terms of this. You can describe this picture you're seeing of me, right? And you can do that. That's fine, right? This is what I am from your perspective. But I can't utilize that for my own sense of self. Right? It's a perspective amongst many, none of which I actually have. So if you're trying to look for the self that as something that you can see, right? That's the distortion. But knowing that you can't see it, the projector doesn't project on itself. It can't see itself. Then you begin to look for yourself in a different way that isn't distorted, that is direct experience. And this is where I keep pointing back to simply beginning to just feel, right? That very subtle sense of your own being. And it's very simple, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And it's very quiet. It's very empty. There's not much there, which means the mind isn't interested. So it's always going to be jumping back to something it can grab hold on. And this is the discipline of it. This is the practice. Let's say, well, that's not me though. And this is all well and good. I can engage in the world, but right this moment, I'm only interested in me, in knowing myself directly, not through an intermediary. but directly, because who else is going to be able to know me better than me? Right? Nobody could describe me. Right? It will always be their perception of it. Right? So the existence of things, we can't really separate our perception of a thing, and that's what it meant by the existence anything has is projected from the mind. The idea that something exists in and of itself, completely objective, and I'm sensing its characteristics through my perceptive mechanism, is simply false. It's an assumption that cannot possibly be proven. And so all I ever experience of anything is my perception of it, which means the existence that it has, from my experience, is only what I believe it to be. And so I question what that is and recognize that I'm seeing my projection. I am not actually seeing the thing itself, and I never can. So how do I know what is real and what isn't? Well, I have to turn towards the projector, because this is a projection. We can see how fragile and flimsy our opinions and perceptions are. We have to go back to the place that is seeing, that is actually doing the seeing, that place of cognition, and find out what is that. So if I know what that is, if I'm clear about that, I will not project anything distorted anymore, and I will see things as they are, the right views of the Eightfold Path. Now, what is the relationship between the storyteller and the sage? Boy, that's a whole question in and of itself. You're referring to the way in which I have taught the chakras. And the storyteller refers to the third chakra. The sage refers to the seventh. The storyteller being the sense of identity that is the instinctual nature. It's the egoic mind. It is the conditioned sense of self. And the storyteller is rich in all of this. As I was saying earlier about energetic assumptions, they're stories that the nervous system creates to try to explain the circumstances, right? Because it needs to have an explanation of things. There's just something in the way the whole system works in human beings that it needs a map of reality. It needs to have a view of what everything is. And its capacity is really amazing, because if it runs across something that it doesn't know, it makes up a story about it and then believes it to be true. It doesn't need it to be true. It doesn't care if it's true. It just wants to believe it's true because that it feels good. Now, this has been proven psychologically. This is not this is not esoteric stuff. This is an actual fact of the way the nervous system works, the way the sense of self and identity and the need to have an explanation of what's happening works. It's automatic. There's nothing you can do about it. It's all part of this mechanism. This mechanism corresponds in the chakra system to the lower three chakras, which I call the tribe, the nymph, and the storyteller. And they make up the unconscious, the instinctual, our animal nature, right? Before it has risen to the level of the beginning of the birth into spiritual awakening. And the culmination of that is the sage, the seventh chakra. So the sage is the knowledge of yourself as you actually are. That is the sixth chakra, the which I call the visionary, also called the third eye, has a vision of deity. It has a vision for one's life on an individual level, sees possibility, but then on the other level, it actually beholds the divinity. It is the sixth, that energy of the visionary that allows us to engage like this. It's an aspect of this whole functioning of consciousness. And so it tastes, it can see into these areas and is no longer completely constricted by the storyteller and all this stuff going down here, although it's still influencing it for a while. But what it is perceiving is what would be called the sage. That is when you aren't just perceiving God, you are God. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that the true self is revealed, abiding as that rather than abiding in that. You're not seeking. You are one with what is sought. The seeker's gone, and all that remains is that which is sought. Is the Ribhu Gita puts it that the devotee discovers themselves to be the essence, that Shiva is the essence of the very worshiper themselves. The worshiper disappears like the moth in the flame. There's nothing left but flame. And that's the relationship. Perceived from the outside, it appears to be an extremely wise person. But from the point of view of the consciousness that is reflected there, it sees itself as wisdom itself, the truth, manifesting as a form, which is completely different. So you could say this is the sage is the full realization of the true self. The storyteller is the egoic mind, which eventually yields, and the stories begin to form. There's nothing wrong with the process of the storyteller. It's just being governed by this one story that isn't actually true. That story gets replaced, right? The storyteller or the ego, the center upon which the storytelling functions, that center is taken out and the sage is put in, and this is what appears as a human, as an enlightened human being. How's that, Rosalind? That's not a bad explanation, I think. Brent, Brother G, your response last week hasn't left me. The I and the desire arising simultaneously has never been more clear. Can you help me see what is more subtle than this seeing? Thank you. Well, it's funny because you're looking right at it. What is it that is seeing the I and the desiring arising simultaneously? Can you see that? No, you can't. You can't see it because you are that. Now, there's all sorts of thoughts about that. The I thought is all about this you that is perceiving it. But it isn't the you that is perceiving it. Now, you cannot get any more subtle than that. You cannot get any more subtle than that which is perceiving even the I. But now, abiding as that, right, is the whole practice, because the I that appears is always being referencing a thought. It's always referencing this very subtle, energetic assumption of identity. That is the person that is not directly seen, is seen through its influence on everything else. It's very subtle. It is the subtlest of the subtle. That's why the devil is known as being so subtle. And the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Whispering. Because it's an influence, right? It's not direct. Okay? But so we see its influence. Right? So notice that you are and rejoice that you are able to see that the I that identifies arising at the same time the desire does, and perceiving it and misperceiving it and constraining all sorts of things like that. And rejoice in that. Don't let the mind say, okay, what's next? What's next? Stop for a second. Wait. And really relish the revelation of that seeing. And then very naturally turn towards the seeing of it itself, recognizing that which is seeing cannot be seen. It cannot be perceived directly. Why? Because it's you. That's the real you. That is God, the true I am. I am prior to I am. Moses asked what his name was. Who sent me? He said, I am that I am. But that was there before those words were uttered, before there was a name, before there was anything there. It's silent. It's utterly silent, which is why our minds have no interest in it. They can't see it. You can't see something that doesn't have a form, and this does not have a form. The seeing itself does not have a form, but that seeing is the I am. That's the true God. But again, the mind will want to go, okay, what's next? What's next? I'm on my way. I'm almost there. I'm enlightened. Almost. Notice that, because that too is a very subtle spiritual desire with an I that sees itself as separate, right? And just sit with that. Contemplate on that. My brother Brent. Lovely. Marty, perfect topic for me today. Thanks, G. You're welcome. Perfect topic for me, too. The I. The sense of I. The entire world revolves around the sense of I. The whole thing. I'm reminded of a story of a Buddhist monk that was traveling, and he was noticed by a young man who turned out to be a reporter and a journalist. And so he approached him. He was curious about the monkey. He says, what's the biggest problem facing humanity? What's the biggest problem in the world today? Is it hunger? Is it lack of education? Is it corruption, government? Is it global capitalism? Is it global warming? And the monk said to him, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question first. He said, who are you? He says, well, I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. He says, no, that's what you do. Who are you? He says, well, I'm, and he gives him his name. He says, no, that's just a name that you go by. Who are you? He says, well, and he goes off on a bunch of things. I'm a human being. He says, well, no, that's just the form you happen to be in right now. I'm a man. That too is just a form. He goes through a bunch of stuff, and he finally goes kind of exasperated. He says, well, to put it all that way, I don't know who I am. And the monk says, that is the biggest problem in the world. It's all about the I, and we can get completely absorbed in all the changes and fixes and stuff we want to do in the world, which is okay. I work with a lot of people on a whole bunch of different levels as to where they are in their life. And that is a phase that we all have to go through, right? But my thrust is always trying to move more and more towards the spiritual, towards the existential, towards the recognition that my whole experience of life is completely determined by my sense of I. What I mean by I, there is my entire life, and that is the entire world's life. And this misperception of what the I is the problem, the only real problem the world is facing. And until that's solved, the problems will just keep getting worse and more of them. So, Carl, hi GP. If you experience disengaging, leaving the body during a traumatic event, and then feel like not all of you fully returned, will being observing help heal this? Or where to start? Thank you. Well, yes, that's exactly what happens. The trauma cuts us off, right? And yes, being, observing, reconciling, that's why I have a process called inner reconciliation to create. See, the where to start is by creating a safe space, a space safe enough that the energy of the trauma, which is simply holding a position, can relax. And when it does that, it lets go. And as it lets go, the defenses come down, and these parts that it has been protecting now can come out because they don't need to be hidden anymore. They don't need to be concealed or protected. That layer can be dropped. So that's how it works, right? This is how all of it works, whether it being the traumatic event that happens in life, like the loss of a loved one or a car crash or something, or it's the childhood stuff that takes place, a systematic diminishment or abuse, or just anything that can happen, just the ton of stuff that can happen when we're young, ranging from the most mild to the most abusive. They're all the same. It's all the same, and the reaction of the nervous system is always the same. To try to freeze as much as it can to survive, and it successfully does that, or you wouldn't be here. So now it's simply creating this space where the nervous system can go, oh, okay, it's safe. Whew, it really is safe again. But most of the time what we're doing is we're just kind of perpetuating the unsafe environment through ruminating over it. What do I do and how do I fix it? I'm going to avoid that. I'm not going to drive anymore, or, right? I'm never going to be in a relationship again, or all of these things we try to do, which simply reinforces the underlying assumption that it's dangerous. Life is dangerous. I can't survive. Contract. And so it is an inner reconciliation. That's why I named the process that. You are creating a safe space that allows everything to reconcile. For that which needs to be hidden and put out of sight, to be able to come out into the open. When that happens, the defenses going down is the diminishment of the trauma. And in that safety, that which is being protected is now re-released. We experience that as integration, or as a coming together, as a soul unification kind of thing. So that's where you start. Right? Begin to learn to create a safe space for yourself. Right? And if I could sum up all of the courses that I do that are not directly non-dual, that's what it is. That's all they are. Every meditation, of the bit of tapping that I do, pretty much every course I do is that. Learning how to create the inner space of safety where the energy will itself then heal. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to heal it. It knows what it's doing. You just have to give it the space to do it. Thanks, Carl. Anthony. Hi, G. How to reconcile trauma and non-duality. I know I am. However, there are times that my body just reacts in a way that feels so overwhelming. I know I'm supposed to face the feelings, but they seem to arise for no apparent reason, which makes me think it's due to trauma. Is it possible to just drop a feeling or emotion that seems to serve no purpose? Well, there's no such thing as an emotion or a feeling that serves no purpose. They are all in reaction to something. The nervous system is not stupid. It doesn't make stuff it doesn't need, right? So if it's there is a perceived danger or threat or problem, even if you're not consciously aware of it, right? And of course, when you say it's due to trauma, that's what the trauma is. It's this underlying sense that this is dangerous, period, right? And so it reacts that way, and a thought comes up or a feeling comes up, and you may not have any idea what its origin is. Now, when I'm doing processing with people in inner reconciliation, I just assume I don't know what it is, where it came from, or why it's there. Any thought, anyone, right? Even ones that seem obvious. I learned a long time, the beginning of where inner reconciliation came from is when I realized that I was imposing what I thought it was on feelings that were far more nuanced and subtle and changeful, that my analysis of it just couldn't do them any justice. I was literally creating the very problem I was trying to solve by trying to force it into a box. So I decided that I was stupid, that I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I threw all of that out. And I just instead put myself in the position of being 100% present with whatever whatever it was that came up, assuming that it had a reason for coming up, and my job was to give it all the space it needed to do whatever it needed to do, and up to and including nothing at all. And my job was to just let it do it, and to continue to cultivate within myself this capacity to be present with whatever was there, however uncomfortable or difficult or unpleasant, right? Even the worst kind of things coming to the surface. The practice was cultivating that equanimity. Right? Now, from the point of view of non-duality, for me, it's a very practical thing. It's not philosophical. Well, I could go. Boy, that's a whole tangent. I'll just stay with this. It was eventually coming to see that I was something completely different from my body, my mind, my feelings, my conditioning. That my existence was not a result of that, nor dependent upon that. That informed the whole process by which I could redeem that. For the longest time, I thought it was just, okay, I transcended. It's not real, right? And off I would go into the absolute. Well, this didn't get any better. All right, that was weird. Okay. A couple of adjustments here. Let's make sure the audio is back. It's back. All right. You should all be able to hear me again. My computer everything just freaked out. Everything got lost. Disk drives crashed. Can you all hear me now and see me? All right. I'm gonna wait here for a second so people can confirm that I am in fact back and it's working. Yes, no, please. Somebody type something in. Yes. Okay. You're in seat. Good. Thank you. Thank you. I can't remember where I was. So Anthony, yes. Is it possible to just drop a feeling? Notice that in that sense, when you say drop a feeling, there's a very subtle sense of wanting to get rid of it. Right? I prefer, instead of just drop, is to just take your hands off of it. Right? When there's this tendency that we want to drop or let go. We really want the bad feelings to go away. Right? Which means we've created a relationship with them that is conflicting, which in fact conveys to them that there's something wrong with them, they're a problem, they need to be fixed, which makes them more defensive. It's the way it works. And so we really have to develop to the place of a total equanimity, a place where we really just let things be as they are with no resistance whatsoever. Now that's a high state. That's a Buddha level state. Okay. And I'm not going to argue right? And say that you just flip into that. So it becomes a practice, right? It's where the non-dual, the direct experience, the direct path, and a progressive path are not in conflict with one another. The essential insight is that I am the self. I am already everything I'm seeking, right? And the conditioning, the experiencing, the state of the body-mind complex, right, is the vehicle through which I express. Now, this can go the entire life and be messed up the entire life, and it will have absolutely no effect on who I actually am. But there's this natural sense of compassion towards it, because of course it's also the human experience I'm having, and I always want more freedom for self-expression. I do that by liberating the conditioning. Now notice, I can liberate the conditioning without identifying with it. Matter of fact, I can't liberate it unless I'm not identified with it. If I am identified with it, I'll be fighting with it. And so this is where non-duality and processing, or non-duality and interreconciliation, they're not at war with each other. Non-duality is the underlying truth that informs the rest, that shows how processing is to be done, how to meditate, what the object and goal of meditation and self-improvement actually is. Right? It is not just to make a better version of myself, but to bring the whole functioning of the human being into harmonious alignment with what's actually true. And that's an alignment that never gets lost. And so it becomes an experience by which my deep inquiry into the nature of myself always manifests itself in some kind of a compassionate engagement with life as it is. I use the example of the rescue dog, your human life, your human body, your human mind, and the like, is like a rescue dog, right? It's not you, right? But your compassion for it is just enormous, and the process of bringing it out of its state of constant of conditioned fear and self-doubt and all of that is rewarded, with this great love and enthusiasm, and it becomes the model for everyone else to follow. So let's see. So you don't need to drop the feeling of emotion. Matter of fact, you can't. You can only create a space that is so safe that the nervous system itself drops it. Just like if you create a safe space for the rescue dog, eventually it will drop all of the behavior that it acquired when it was under such duress. And so it drops it. You simply drop all of your disagreement or conflict with it. And you let it be what it is, recognizing that, yeah, of course, what else would it have been, right? The abuse that a lot of us have received as kids, how else were we going to be? Duh. I can see exactly who I became as a result of the environment in which I grew up. It's just so self-evident that that's what I would be. That's where it would go. And I look back now and with just the most intense compassion, not just for me, but for the people who are involved who were abusive, because it's just this long chain of it. And this is how we end that. We put an end to it by becoming that which is completely open and loving and compassionate. You become the Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva is informed by the Buddha. Thanks, Anthony. Hey, Brett, Park City, Utah. Good to see you. Liza, hello. Roz Gray, another one from, Southeast England. Well represented. Anthony, this is so timely for me, G. Thank you. Thank you. You're so welcome, my friend. Great explanation to Sally about assumptions. Thank you, Mary. I guess I should excerpt that one. Jay, I've heard that Swami Chimnyananda was very active the majority of his life, but towards the end, he was talking to his students about how everything just fell off, like the entire system came into alignment with the realization. Took a whole life, but he was always energetic in his discourses. Great, great. I hope I'm energetic when I get old. A little bit of humor. Yes, you know, please don't beat yourself up because you've had an awakening. Your whole heart is completely invested in this. You know it's true, and you got all sorts of shit happening. Please don't make any deal out of it, right? You've spent lifetimes accumulating the shit. It may take a while for it to peel off, and peeling it off in one lifetime. Oh, good Lord! Yeah, we can't allow the mind to say, well, you're not there because look at all this. And it's like, no, I'm never anywhere but there. Right? Now, what do I do with all of this? How do I express my wholeness in a life that feels really incomplete and all sorts of stuff going on? How do I come into that harmony with it and see that it's not two? That there's no antagonism, and nothing happening in the world is a reflection of who I actually am, right? Which is the open door to the heart of great heart of compassion. And this is what the world needs, right? And what is the world other than my perception of it? You healing yourself, healing the world, coming into your wholeness, it coming into its wholeness, same thing. You can't separate it. Thank you, Jay. Peter, good evening from Italy. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Joseph Grasso, love GP. Love you, man. Barbara in Sweden, Plan, thank you for your question about tension. I have the same issue. Yeah, I did too. I can still feel every now and then. I can feel it. I go, oh, there, look at that. What's up? It's a first chakra, very primitive resistance. And don't think anything of it. Recognize it. That's what's going on. Don't turn it into a problem. It isn't. The mind wants to, because then it gives it something to do, because now I get to fix it. It's not a problem. Just observe, just watch with compassion, and the story will unfold. It will reveal itself. This is the beauty of this work, right? It heals itself. You become the space. Mary, you don't know how much I and others have suffered because of the evangelicals. Thank you for speaking more about this topic. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I do know. Yes. Yes. Yes, very, very much. They just, oh God, just the havoc they have done, the psychological and emotional damage they have done are still doing. It is on a par, and wanting to enforce it on others. Right, this is the big one. I mean, they're also white supremacists and fascists. They want this country, and we won't be the only ones if they manage to do it. They want it living under this rule. They want a new, Catholic empire, and they've done as much damage as Catholicism has done. Yeah. And, gently and compassionately, I have to speak out against it. This is not Christianity. Bears no resemblance to it. And it needs to be seen for what it is, and God be redeemed. God being redeemed. Yes. Those that kill you, take away your rights, take away your ability to choose, will be doing it in God's name. They will think they were doing God's service. They are the deceived as deceived. They are sinning against the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is the right of somebody to choose God for themselves, and they take that away. Oh no, you just got to choose God out of duress, out of fear. That isn't choice. If I'm moral because I'm afraid of the consequences or I don't have the opportunity, I'm not moral. Not in the slightest. So I am so overjoyed and honored to bring comfort to the victims of the evangelicals. And I've got many. It's been really gratifying to see. I've had many who have come to see its true colors, right? The distortion of Christ. Oh my God, one of the most gentle human beings that ever lived. Right? A true. I don't even know how awake he was. The struggles and everything. It's so hard to discern between what might have actually happened and the stories and the like. It's just really impossible to sort it all out. There was somebody there, because when you get to the essence of what he was saying, it was just too different from the traditional theology of the time, even the more radical theology of the time, to have not had somebody who represented that, somebody whose consciousness had been transformed to some extent. I don't know if all the healing and walking on water and that was attributed to him was real. It was attributed to Horus, and the Egyptians. It's that kind of stuff are mythological devices that get applied a lot to heroic figures, and they're not actually historically valid. They're mythological devices, right, to represent something. Walking on water means walking above the ego, the turbulent. The waters always represent the unconscious. So walking above and on that unconscious, the subconscious, and this full consciousness is what that actually represents, right? Not somebody walking out on the water. And even when Peter came out and joined him, and he took his hand, but Peter was still in between the identification. But at the same time, we have the same being walking on water and then struggling in the Garden of Gethsemane. So the story is a rich one, and it is full of mythological content that does seem to have some historical validity to it, but it isn't its historicity that matters. It is the truth that he was speaking, and he was speaking quite clearly that the I am is that God within you. That sense of I am in you is the Father. That is the God, the true God. So, so glad, Mary. So glad. Hey, GP. I really recently listened to David Hawkins talking about muscle testing as a way to get yes/no answers from subconscious mind. But is that not just our nervous system programming answering? Thank you. There's a lot of legitimacy to it. I haven't in a long time, but I have used it on occasion. It's not exact, because it's recognizing energy healing and energy flow, and that flows can go backwards. They can be off. Even in muscle testing, they have to recognize that sometimes yes means no and no means yes. So you cannot take it as an absolute truth. And the other thing it does that I think is more subtle and more problematic, especially from the point of view of wanting to know who you really are, right? That it makes an entity of importance out of the subconscious mind, right? And the subconscious mind is just stuff we believe and have forgotten that we believe it. I mean, that's all it is. And so, yes, you can get some information about it, but there's no healing in that, right? And those that are real proponents of muscle testing accept it. Oh, this is the truth. I mean, I know one person in particular who, his whole business, he worked with this guy who did muscle testing on everything, and his whole business was run by muscle testing. right? So you're going to do something. This guy muscle tested. Now, the guy who was doing the muscle testing was taking a lot of money from him, right? And the business actually eventually ran into the ground, right? So, you know, this whole thing, I've seen, you know, the kinesiology, just, I've actually watched some of them, and you can see how they're tricking it. That they're grifters. So you really have to be careful with the whole thing. It has to become a very subjective thing. And remember that the subconscious is not the truth. It is a collection of beliefs, right? Now, there's more truth in the body itself, right? Which is not the same, by the way, right? It's a different level of energy. And the body, in terms of its pure response to the environment, is much closer to the truth, but it's not the truth, because it's subject to the programming and reactive patterns and and its own protective mechanism, right? So I don't use it. I find that if I just create a safe enough space and I have a real honest conversation with the energy, that I get to the truth. And that may or may not be confirmed by the muscle testing. So I trust the process of being present more than I trust the muscle testing, which will be influenced both by the pre-existing assumptions of the person being tested and the pre-existing assumptions of the one doing the testing, because nobody can get outside of their perception of things. And so it'll always be interpreted, right? It'll always be interpretive, but we will think that we're getting in touch with the actual truth. Oh, this is the truth. No, it's not. The only real truth there is your being, the God within, the true I, the I am prior to I am. That is the only truth. And so much as I love David Hawkins, and I think he did a lot of really, really good things with the whole letting go thing. I completely disagree with him on this. And also his scale of enlightenment, which you can tell isn't absolute because it's lopsided towards the Bible. I mean, he puts the Bible in his rating above Ramana Maharshi and the Buddha. It's like, what? It's like, okay, clearly his own assumptions were influencing that. So it wasn't really true. So yeah, I don't use it for that reason, and I found a much better way for what we would call the subconscious, which is really the energetic, the unspoken, to emerge and reveal itself in some way. And that's what I call inner reconciliation, just being the loving presence. So thanks, Clara. Nice question. Nice question. Plan, thanks for your answer, G. Yes, I know I'm the self and should rest as it. Just hard to find the right words sometimes. You are the master when it comes to that. Yeah. Words. Yes. Well, that's the artful use of words, is to point, right? And it's subtle stuff, right? It's just subtle stuff, right? And that's all I'm doing is pointing you back to the stuff that, oh, once you see it, it's like, oh yeah, right, of course, as that. But you can see the habit of separation. So I'm not resting as it anymore. I'm resting in it. Notice it's the storyteller mind creating a self. And it happens all the time. It's what it does. It creates identity. And as long as we know that it's doing that, we will become free of it. Lovely, 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 lovely. Elliot, woohoo! Hello, Elliot. Hello, Jennifer. Oh, Baba G. Peck, 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 Jennifer. Faith. Hello, my chic, my spiritual tribe. I regard finding the freedom as my ultimate goal. However, I don't know how to navigate life. Things are overwhelming here. Searching for a job, longing for a partner. Yeah. Right. Which is all part of the process of the realization of your ultimate goal of freedom. Okay? How do I become free of the overwhelm without disengaging with life, being fully in life? How do I become free of the longing for a partner without giving up the deep desire for a partner. Right? It's subtle, right? We think, okay, I got the longing's got to go away. Well, no, it doesn't, right? It's very natural, right? My goodness, we all long for it, right? And just, for me, hanging out with my granddaughter, right? There's this, we long for each other's company. We just love each other's company. It's so much fun, right? She loves her baba. And it's just this most wonderful thing. And I'm beginning to get that relationship with my younger granddaughter, the one who's just turned 1. It's just beginning to happen at that same level. And there is just this natural craving for it. But I also know that it's going to go. I'm going to be gone before she is. Right? She's going to have to let go of this Baba. I've already primed her. Right? Says, no, the body dies, you don't. And she knows that now. She even said to her dad, says, no, body dies, I don't. And Dad says, you're absolutely right. So it's the kind of thing that begins to, it takes root, which isn't going to change it. The grief is going to be the same. So you want to let go of the suffering without letting go of the longing. See, the suffering comes when the mind says, I won't be happy or satisfied until I have that. And then, the misguided spiritual would come along and say, it's a desire, transcend your desires, don't have the longing, right? It's not possible. You can't be a human being without it, right? We don't want to stop being human, right? We want to stop suffering as humans. So allow the longing to be there as the natural energy of life, and that it has a destiny of its own, and at the right time in the right place, it will fulfill itself. Right? And this idea, I don't know how to navigate life. I'm 70 years old. I don't know how to navigate life. Every day is a surprise to me, right? And the times when I did know how to do it, there was a time, well, the world changed on me. Just when I thought I had it down, the whole world changed on me. And it's like, I don't have it down anymore. It's like, oh, that doesn't work anymore. Great, right? Coming to terms with the fact that I was inherently dysfunctional was a great liberation, right? This is it. I don't need to navigate life. I don't need to control life. The tree doesn't need to decide how it's going to grow its leaves or what it's going to do, or are they going to change in time and fall off? Am I going to stuck in the winter? What am I going to do? It doesn't have any of that stuff going on. Why? Because you are life. See the separation that the storyteller mind makes, that there's me and then there's life. And somehow I got to navigate through this like it's this ocean of antagonism. I am life. You are life. You don't have to navigate it. It's navigating you. We just think because, well, shouldn't it be going this way? And then life goes, what? What are you talking about? Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. This is the way it's going. Oh, you just let it go. And oh, this is the way life's going. And I start instead focusing all my attention and being so present in this moment and this now, without comparing the past, the future, what might be, what was. Suddenly it's like, oh my God, I am life right here, right now. And I don't have to worry about a damn thing. Everything is flowing exactly perfectly. And I even let go of this human life. Get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? I just went through this battery of medical tests because a couple of things that happened. And after testing me every which way since Sunday, they said, every body part that we tested is younger than you are, right? So okay. What does that mean? Well, okay. So those things aren't going to kill me, right? This life is not mine. It's not a personal possession, right? I am life. I'm the witness of life. I am the participant in life all at the same time. It is all myself, my actions, my activities. It is myself made known. Who is the self? That's all you need to know. Who is it that is experiencing that longing for a partner? Who is it that's witnessing this overwhelm, which is simply the mind spinning, trying to figure stuff out? Right? Oh, what if I don't need to figure it out? Poor mind. Stop. It's okay. You don't have to figure it out. No need to be overwhelmed. You're not good enough for this job. Don't worry about it. Right? You're on vacation. Somebody else is taking care of this. This way, you never had to take care of this. Right? You're not really suited for it. Here, do this over here. Oh, okay. I'll do that instead. Chant a mantra or something. Oh, okay. I can do that. So, how does that feel, Faith? My dear girl. Rosalind. Vigilant, or no, thank you. I will stay vigilant. Thank you for the response. The I will stay vigilant. Good, yeah. But don't turn it into vigilante, okay? Just watch this most gentle, loving thing. Anthony, brilliant. I will do just that. Thank you, G. You're welcome. Dante, pretty good. Thanks. Oh, thank you. Jennifer got stuck laughing. Hear and see again. Yeah, great. Infinite being glitch was another good one. Oh, yeah, the last infinite being. I heard that after the fact. It's like, oh, my. Oh, all is working. Let's see. Just had to refresh. All good. Refresh the link. Do all thoughts come from the ego separate self? Lyrics in life. Nice question. No, they don't. The ego separate self is a thought. Okay? It is itself. It's kind of a generalization of thought. It itself is a thought, the sense of based on a sense, the sense of I. And that sense of I can identify with the source, with the infinite beingness, or it can identify with the experience. This is the nature of it. This is how we have experience. Without that, there is no experience. Right? This is the firstborn of the absolute infinite being. Right? And so within this context, within this sense of experience, the sense of ego or separate self arises. Again, it's not a problem because it's really part of how one functions as an individual within the world, right? But it is just a sense. It isn't a thing. It doesn't generate thought. So it's not something that can think, right? So what it is actually is kind of a belief, a generalization, right? That the flow of thoughts conforms to. And so those thoughts reflect this sense of ego or a separate self. But it's not an entity. It's a character, right? And so the thoughts flow in that direction as if there was such a thing as an ego or a separate self. And that's why it becomes confusing. And that's why people overcoming the ego, which turns it into an entity, right? The ego, oh, my ego is doing this, or, my ego is generating these thoughts. They're not. They're thoughts that got put into place early on that followed a particular pattern that worked within the environment as a child. Out of it naturally grew a sense of identity, because that's what happens within the system. That sense of identity kind of organizes and explains the particular set of functions that were programmed in before there was really a sense of identity. They were there first, the identity forms later, and then solidifies into what we call the egoic mind, or the sense of a separate self. And that seems to hold these patterns in place, right? Until we begin to see that that's all they are, as a pattern, and that this doesn't actually exist as an entity. And so at that point, you recognize, where did it go? Right. Oh, there it is. You recognize that those thoughts don't come from it, but are an implementation of it. And it doesn't exist separate from those thoughts and feelings and other stuff. At which point, recognizing that it's just a pattern that hasn't been scrutinized, you begin to scrutinize it, and the pattern begins to dissolve, because without the belief in the ego to hold it in place, there's nothing holding it in place. Right? It's only the belief in the separate self that held it in place. When that goes away, then suddenly these thoughts, it can feel a bit chaotic at first. Well, what do we do? Where do we go? Who are we? Who am I? I'm totally disoriented. But eventually what they do is they begin to reorganize around the deeper sense of who you are. Right? So the thoughts are never being generated by some kind of nefarious character, right? They're just patterns of thought put into place because of conditioning and environment, all of that. In and of themselves, they're innocent, but there's a tendency, just due to the nature of the nervous system wanting to stay safe, to want to hold them in place, because they're the means by which you have interacted with the world and kept safe and continue to be safe. So in that interaction, this is the way the nervous system got used to being, so it kind of wants to hold on to them. So what you do instead is you begin to recognize that, and very gently, you don't force it. Ego is not a bad thing. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as an actual entity or force. It is an influence only because it's never been scrutinized. It's never been seen to be nothing but another thought. The thought of I, right? Thought about thought. Seeing it as such, you can now very gently begin to dismantle that flow, right? And it happens in subtle ways. It comes as feelings, it comes as impression, it comes as all sorts of different things. And you just kind of go, all right, there it is again. And you just remain true, abiding as who you actually are, and cultivating that. So that cultivating that in meditation and self-inquiry of who I actually am, it grows in conviction, it grows in solidity, it grows in stability. And that is what all of the thought flows begin to reorganize around, until the human life begins to match it more closely. And the ego ceases to be this horrible, devilish thing influencing, and this creepy little thing that you have to get rid of, the ego death and all of that. It doesn't have to die. It never existed in the first place. You have to be born before you can die. It's just a thought and nothing more. So, great question, Lyrics in Life. Great name, too. Brett, hi, over Snowy Park City. Thanks, GP. You're welcome. Mary, my Ayurvedic practitioner went to India as a teen with his Christian missionary parents, and he came back to the U.S. a Buddhist. Oh, wonderful. Yay. Susanna, late from band practice. Oh, band practice is more important than me. I'm hurt, but happy to be here anyway. Yeah, all right. Those of you who may not know I'm being facetious, Susanna and I have known each other. Jay, hi, Mary. I know a buddy whose whole family and himself are set in their beliefs in Christianity, but I don't know what happened to him. He now despises the whole thing, and his family is outraged by it. Wow. Yeah, that's going to happen. I'm scanning now a little bit, because I'm running out of time, and I do have to be out of here a little bit earlier. Mary, what an awesome satsang. Thank you so much. We'll listen again. You're welcome, Mary. Vedic, beautiful explanation about kinesiology. Thank you. You're welcome. Jay, his buddy is a Christian. Some of my family members are born again Christians, and they take in church activity. But I hope it brings out better qualities rather than just another clique. Yeah, me too. I've seen people who they're evangelical Christians, but they have, their heart has not been hardened in the same way. I know some, they really believe that, but there's also a tenderness and openness, a compassion towards others that is the genuine Christianity. So even within that, right, as a whole, and the leadership, right, because they're power hungry, right? I mean, they don't realize that. They think they're speaking for God. They're speaking for themselves. And so the overall way in which it's presented, and their aggression and their wanting to basically impose themselves on everybody else is not universal, right? It's just the people who are subordinate to them, they're afraid to challenge it, right? But many that I've met, many, not all, there's quite a few that were actually that virulent, but many I've met that are just much more open, right? Their hearts haven't been shut down. They just don't know how they haven't been able to resolve that disconnect. They are way ahead of their theology, actually. So, yeah, let's see. Profound thanks and gratitude once again, G. Loving the satsangs that go right to the heart of the true nature of the self. So familiar, but always fresh and new. It is always fresh and new, isn't it, Dave and Lane? It is always. Isn't it amazing? Say the same damn thing over and over again, and it never gets tiring. Never gets tiring. It's like, wow. Thank you, says Brent. You're welcome, Brent French. Just abbreviated, Brent French to Brent. David was indoctrinated as a Mormon, did missionary work, left early from it, and came back an atheist. A lot of them do. I've watched some video channels on YouTube of former Christians, and they've so completely rejected it that I've even seen them talking about some parts of Hinduism and Buddhism, and projecting on them as if they were the same as the evangelical Christianity they came from, which they're not even close. But I get it. I get it. There's a need in us to have some kind of point of reference, right? And when that, which to me was the absolute and ultimate, is just completely destroyed, where do I go? This need for some point of reference. And for a lot of them, they get into, it's materialistic science. And so this is a place I can trust the science, it has credibility, and it does, right? And it is far better, right? But it too has an ideological color to it, right? But it really just reveals the fact that we all deeply need, the mind needs a point of reference. It needs a self, right? And there is no self in it. So the self, which is also no self, which is beyond what we can talk of self and not no self. This is what we're here to discover. That's the non-dual center that allows everything else in human life to organize. Right? Just I see no separation between the dual and the non-dual, between the human and the divine, between the most mundane and earthy and the most advanced and spiritual. I see no difference between any of it. It is all one immense, beautiful functioning. And you cannot have one without the other. You cannot have duality without non-duality, or duality without non-duality. You can't. They are one. And the oneness of things that appear to be so opposite is the great mystery. That's the true oneness. That's the true Tao. That can't. How can you speak it? What can you say about it? So, Facebook user IGP, lovely to see you. Love to see too, even though I don't know who you are. Just Facebook user. Hello, Cool J, Lindsay J. Oh, what a delight to come home and find GP live. I'm bummed to have missed most of it. We'll watch replay. Infinite gratitude. Oh, same to you. Oh, gee, what a rich that song today. Everything seems so clear when I'm listening to you. But this one I'm going to listen tomorrow again. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, G. Love. Thanks, G. Love discussion of energetic assumptions, discussion of ego, powerful stuff. Wow. Well, gosh, you guys are helping me out. Questions end by 1:55, so I can make my next commitment here. And it's always touching to me when I hear people say that, well, it was this special satsang. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, right? This morning I had like about 15 different things. It's going to be this, it's going to be this. And it wasn't until I actually sat down to schedule the live stream. So, okay, this is it. And I really have no idea where it's going to go. The mind needs a self as a reference point. Wow, thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Joseph. You're welcome. All right. Thank you all, my lovelies. My dear ones. All my love to you. Until next time, namaste.